Hello, everybody. Craig Sherwood here with you once again, along with Bob Hart. Bob, how you doing?
Greetings and salutations.
There you go.
I worked on that before I got here.
Well, you got to have some rehearsed lines, you know.
For sure.
We're with you for another edition of Coach's Corner, and we're glad you're listening to us today. You know, we got a lot of great comments from our last show, and we appreciate that. We appreciate people who listen to us, and please send us your comments. You know, we read every single one of them, and we do appreciate them. So, Coach, how are things going with the team right now?
We are weathering the storm of the rain and such, but it's going well. Yeah, we work. Guys are working really hard. The culture is good. We'll see what happens. You know, it's that type of thing. I never take anything for granted. So, I try to lowball it. I think that's my approach.
Well, year in and year out. How can as long as you're consistent.
Exactly.
Consistent in your approach.
Yeah.
So I heard you had a little bit of a fun experience. You got to go down on the field for the SC UCLA football game, huh? What was that all about?
We did. My son is works for the Dodgers, so he has some connections. So he hooked us up with the club seats and the field passes and the whole thing. So yeah, very appreciative.
So how was the atmosphere? Are you on the SC side, correct?
We were on both, actually.
Oh, you got it on both sides?
Yeah, we got to go. Yeah, both.
And how was the atmosphere on that SC sideline?
Better before the game than afterwards. Yeah, for sure.
How are you with their quarter? Are you impressed by their quarterback, or do you think? I've seen some things. You talk about Affleck all the time, and there's things I see after some games. I wonder, is he mentally prepared for the pressure of the next level?
It looks to me like he doesn't handle adversity at times well, but that sometimes comes with maturity. I think he's super talented, and I think he'll be very high in the draft. I just think, as with the NFL, and that's kind of playing itself out, that quarterbacks get a lot of blame and maybe too much credit at times. You're really a byproduct of your offensive line and your running game, and it's so interdependent that I think it's a big job. That's why not too many people can do it very well. Yeah,
and you know what? And as good as he is, he's still not. Everybody's talking so highly of him. There's no guaranteed success at that next level either. So
no,
and I just wonder, and as a coach as well as I did, I've been lucky enough to coach a few guys who've made the major leagues, and they're not always looking for just 100% talent. They're looking for the makeup of the player too. How he arrives, how he dresses, how he responds in adversity. Sure. Those are all big proponents and keys to being drafted or being, on a team. So I think as a coach, high school level or college, I think one of your responsibilities is to help mold that person. Mm-hmm. To get him, sure. So he's ready for that next level. Psychologically instead of just physically.
A lot of intangibles in that position in particular. Mental makeup, resiliency. Those guys are super dedicated and super talented, but sometimes, there's more to that equation. It becomes more of a mental thing. There's a lot of talented players that never make it because they don't have the aptitude or the approach. So, yeah, we focus a lot on that because it'll take you a long way if you're in the right place mentally.
Absolutely. And that's not just the guys who are in college to pro. That's from high school into college.
Yeah, I would say that's true in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Relationships, whatever it might be. So, yeah.
Well, it's we're talking about those types of subjects because our guest today, we'll get into a lot of that later because he deals with a sport with a lot of individual, motivation. So, but our guest today, I'm sure if you've been around Burbank for a minute or even an hour, you'll know our guest. And that's Mickey DePalo. Mickey, how you doing?
Fine, Craig. Thanks for having me on today. And Bob, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. Mickey's been around for a long time. I think you've been involved in a lot of things, but I think people more than not know you for all your veterans work you've been doing the last 10, 15, 20 years around Burbank, but they don't realize that you're also a sports person at heart.
Yeah, I had an early introduction to sports from my father.
Tell us about that. What got you involved in sports?
Well, I was born in Ravenna, Ohio, in 1946, December 18th. And as long as I can remember, my dad was a hardcore sports fan.
What were the favorite teams?
Well, my dad was the Cleveland Browns and the
Okay.
Cleveland Indians because that's where he was. He got to see Bob Feller face Joe DiMaggio shortly after he came home from World War II. He always told me that story that he went to the Cleveland State Municipal Stadium and got to see Feller pitch against Joe DiMaggio. So that was his kind of. But he was a Paul Brown fan, and of course, then we moved from Kentucky to here in 1956, and so 2 years later, the Dodgers came. So the
Yeah.
very first World Series game I remember seeing, and I've been a Dodger fan ever since, with 1955 when Johnny Padres shut the Yankees out as a rookie. And I had an occasion to meet Johnny Padres a couple times, and I always let him know that I saw that game. And I don't know if you guys remember Johnny Padres,
Oh, absolutely.
but if you need a clutch game, and that was in you guys on that rotation with Koufax and Drysdale, he would come through with a clutch game. And and it just kind of, my dad gave me that exposure, never pushed me into anything. Baseball was my first sport, and I still love the game, and I played it, a lot of fun, and
How high did you get when in your playing days?
well, I played 1 year at Glendale College.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun.
Who'd you play for, Mick?
I'm sorry?
Who'd you play for?
Oh, Coach Murray Messick. He was a little guy, his claim to fame is he went to Northwestern with Otto Graham,
Wow.
and he knew Otto Graham personally. And Coach Messick was a great guy, a lot of fun to be around. He used to chop down trees to make extra money. He'd always come to practice with all scratched up and everything else, but he was a little banny rooster, he was a tough guy, a wonderful person, and if you wanted to go to a certain school, you tried to get you in there, and so it was a lot of fun. And then I continued to play Sunday ball, and then went into softball.
Which high school did you go to?
Burbank.
You were a Burbank guy?
Graduated in 1964,
Okay.
and had a undistinguished sports career there. I played basketball, some baseball, but looking back on it, I probably should have ran cross country. But at that age, there's no way I wanted to run. Period. So
Yeah, isn't that funny? The sport that a lot of people look at as a punishment.
yeah, run. Yeah, they do.
Is run.
They
Yeah,
do.
like oh,
Exactly.
you've been a bad. Okay, go run. Well, if you like a cross country, you say, oh, please, let me do bad things so I can run.
Yeah, yeah. That was always used as a negative when you were a kid.
Yeah. It'd be like us telling somebody, hey, go hit a baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have been told to hit a baseball. I might have been a little better off.
Well, okay, so those are your early years. Then you moved. Now you served our country.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you very much for the service.
Thank you.
Where did you enlist, or were you drafted,
No.
or
I
tell us about that?
Yeah, I graduated San Fernando Valley State College. It's now CSUN.
Right.
I graduated from there in February 1960. Excuse me. 1969. February 1969, I graduated from there, and the draft was still going. So obviously, I wasn't going to school to keep my deferment. So I got a letter from the Selective Service asking me, you're no longer in school. What are you doing to keep your deferment? Well, I told them I was just working, wasn't doing anything else. So I got my 1A and my physical notice in the same envelope. And July 7th, I remember it like it was yesterday, July 7th, 1969, I went and got my physical and passed it with flying colors. And then they said, you guys will be drafted in 4 to 6 weeks. And a month to the day, I was drafted, August 7th. 2 months to the day, excuse me.
Where'd they ship you off to?
Well, I went to Fort Ord first. Went up there in a bus on October 21st, 1969. They put us on a bus.
Which is now Cal State Monterey Bay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And when I got down to the induction center, a good friend of mine, we're still friends today. We went up to June Lake, and a bunch of us spent a week up there. It was a lot of fun, but he had gotten out of the service, so he took me down to the induction center real early on that Tuesday morning, and he said, "Boy, I'm glad it's you and not me." And I said, "Well, thanks for that." And anyway, we took the bus up to Fort Ord, but prior to that, they asked in the room, who has a college degree? Well, I was fortunate to have gotten all the way through college and graduated with a degree in recreation administration at San Bernardino Valley State. And so they said, well, you guys aren't going in the Marines. You're going to take they call them a 201 file. That's your personnel, your information, your personal information as they call it, the 201 file. So they said, you guys are going to be carrying those up to Fort Ord. Then they were taking everybody else stand up, and they count by twos. They counted by twos, and okay, everybody at the number 2 is drafted into the Marines. So,
Wow.
and that was the last
big system for you, huh? I mean,
that was the last big draft call. That was the last draft call, really, before they went to the lottery.
And what, were you nervous this whole time? Were you? I mean, I don't. I was 11 years old back in 1969, and so I don't remember I know that the country was a little bit, there's issues. I mean, how did you feel at that point? Were you okay with going in and everything else, or were you?
No, I mean, I knew it was inevitable.
You knew you had to do it for your country.
Well, no, I didn't. I wasn't thinking about that. I was pretty much all about myself, and I know my father served, my grandfather served, my uncle served, so I knew it was inevitable for me to get drafted, and I was okay with it because I was nothing special. Not once did I think about not reporting for the draft. It never entered my mind, and so I always looked at it like, well, this is something it's meant to be. If I'm fortunate enough to get through it, fine. If not, well, then that's my destiny in life. So
that's an amazing attitude. I wish I had that strength. I don't know if I don't know if I had that strength at that age.
I don't know if you'd call it strength. It was just like I was just resigned to it, and all I wanted to do was get my 2 years done and get out.
So that was in 1969. And then where did you go to? Where did they send you to?
Well, I went to Fort Ord, did basic training up there, and then I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, for military police training. They made me a military policeman. Don't ask me why. You go through a bunch of aptitude tests and physical testing, and so they made me an MP. And so I went through MP training at Fort Gordon, Georgia, which my grandfather, he was stationed there in World War I before he went to France. That's where he fought in France. And from there, I went to confinement training where you went for a month. They taught you how to be a prison guard.
Okay.
That's what the Army did. They could teach you something in 1 month and you know everything.
What was there a lot of soldiers who had to be locked up a lot, or was that a common thing? Or I mean,
no, it was very common, especially when I was in the Army, and prior to that, a lot of people were given the alternative: go to jail or go in the Army.
Right.
So they'd go in the Army, and then they'd end up in jail in the Army. That's and then they stopped doing it after they found out this is not logical. They stopped doing it several years after I got out. And so I went to Leavenworth, Kansas. That's a United States Disciplinary Barracks. That's a big prison, biggest military prison. And I was there for only 3.5 months, and I got orders for Vietnam.
Oh.
And then I was a military policeman over in Vietnam.
Well, and then so how long were you in Vietnam for?
About 11 months. I got an early out to go back to school. I was going to get my master's degree.
Okay.
And
we got our dog has found a squeaky ball and decided he wants to be on our podcast. So if you hear a little squeaking in the background, sorry about that. Go ahead, Mickey. I'm sorry.
Okay. So anyway, that's what I did for 11 months. And, experienced a lot of things, and when I first came home, it was a little different than and which I'm happy. It was a little different, our reception when we got home than the men and women now serving our country. I think.
Yeah, when you came back, I mean, what was the attitude then? I mean, were you?
Well, it was in my case, it was pretty like indifferent. All I know is that my parents and my sister and my brother-in-law and my real friends showed me a lot of love. So that's all that's important, as far as I'm concerned. The people that I cared for and they cared for me, whatever anybody else thought, I kind of I was numb to that. It didn't make me happy, but I was numb to it.
You came back in about 71, 72 in that
I
area?
came back in 1971.
Okay. And then, so what was your first, once you got discharged and you were out, what was your first,
Okay.
what happened then with you?
Okay, when I got
what was your next
drafted,
direction?
yeah, when I got drafted, I was working with the city, part-time in park and
Oh,
recreation.
you were at the city back then?
Yeah, I
Okay.
started work with the city in 1967, April 1967. And what happened is I took a military leave of absence when I got drafted. So I got, my position was there for me when I come home. And also I got the pay increases as when I was still overseas, because my position was, somebody took my position, but and then when I came home, I got the right step position back, and the person that replaced me, he also had a position too, so I didn't take a job away from nobody, which was a good thing. And so I came back, and looking back on it was a pretty big mistake. I came back, and I was working less than a week after I got home, and I was in school like maybe 2 weeks or less, going to Cal State Northridge, and there was also demonstrations out there and everything else. So, in looking back at that, but hindsight doesn't do any good. That was kind of a mistake on my part.
In what
'Cause
sense?
I wasn't ready to be, get back into. I needed some time to.
De-escalate a little bit.
Yeah, and there was no such thing as, we're gonna help you, and and I'm really glad they do that with the men and women of today, that they ask for help, they get help,
Yep.
and all I want.
But back then, wasn't, if you asked for help, it was showing weakness or something?
Well,
It was a different mentality back then,
yeah.
wasn't it?
But a lot of times, yeah, I really, because I never asked for help, so I really can't say what they did. I know when I was in, excuse me, and I know when I was in Vietnam, they were the drug was pretty epidemic, the heroin addiction, and so they were offering they were testing before you left country, before you went back to the United States. They were testing for drugs before you got on the plane. They're giving you urine tests.
It's funny. I've never heard that before.
I haven't either.
They started that shortly before I came home. I think a couple of years before I came home. And so there was when I was over there, it was the war was winding down, so to speak. But
What's interesting is, if they were testing everybody, they knew there was a problem, but yet they didn't seem to be addressing the problem. But they're trying to act. I don't want to whitewash it, but everybody comes home and they're not addicted supposedly anymore. But what were they doing to stop the problem while they were there? That would be more concerning to me. The guy next to you is on something.
and the morale, that was another thing. It was people were tired, and there were a lot of racism. It was just a kind of a really tough situation to be in,
Mhm.
and
But I think, looking back, that helps form the man you become a little bit. The experience of all that, and now you come home and you're a little bit, a little more seasoned. A little more understand how the world works a little more.
yeah, that's true. I mean, I grew up in Burbank, and I was when I got drafted, I was 22. That was old to be drafted. Like I said, I got through 4 years of school,
Mhm.
and but still, I was 22, going on about 17, because I lived in Burbank, and my dad was a old school Italian who he delved out the discipline. My mom spoiled me rotten, and there was when I first moved out of the house, I was bringing clothes home, and she would wash them, and my dad put a stop to that. But
And who didn't do that at one time or another,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But like I said, I was naive, and when I went in the military, from the very first day till the day I got out, you live like a you're in the service for 2 years, but it's like you've been in there for 10.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't care if anybody what their service, what they did in the service, whether they went overseas or not. It's life changing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Imagine. So, okay, you're back. You're back with the city to work. Now, as long as I can remember, you were the guy at Verdugo Park.
Yeah,
You were the guy really running the park and the programs, and that was,
yeah.
you knew that was Mickey's Park.
Well, what
So
happened?
how'd that come to?
Yeah, when I first got home, like I said, I was working part time, and then they got some more money in the budget, and so they made a few of our jobs full time. So in like 72 or 73, I don't remember the year, but I went on as full time, and then of course I was paying into PERS all that time too. So I ended up working, counting my service time, which I got 2 years credit for, because I was still I took the leave of absence. And so I retired counting my service time with 41 and a half years with the city.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
I had a great job, wonderful job. And
well, I know when I went there, to Verdugo, you always wanted to say hi. You remembered my name. You made people feel welcome. More like a family atmosphere.
Yeah,
it was a Burbank atmosphere.
Yeah, it was. And but like I said, I had a kind of a my way or the highway attitude. I kind of was I was pretty strict and
well, yeah, so it's responsibility
right,
too.
right.
And people don't understand responsibility, what
But-
that means.
But I it was a little bit of that was, from my prior experience,
Mhm.
in life. And but as I kind of got a little more wisdom, and I always was consistent, but then I needed to be a little more flexible in how I dealt with people. So
Mhm.
I worked at that, and I'm still working at that. It's life ain't easy, and so uh, I try to pour my daily activities into something that is more positive, or maybe make a difference in somebody's life, and that's kind of and it's a good feeling for me.
You've certainly done that. I know I can speak firsthand. I used to go to Verdugo Park all the time, and he put up with my antics and the antics of many. So
There was a lot of them.
there was a lot of them.
Bob was mellow compared to most of them that came in there.
Well, that's just it. You remember all us as kids probably one time or another, and
Oh, sure.
and you've seen us probably in our worst times and our formative years. So
Well, and
you've seen us mature
Yeah.
since then.
Bob posts this picture of himself on Facebook once in a while, and I swear to God, he looks like one of the East Side Kids or the Little Rascals. And I always comment on that. I mean, that would have been a great what do you call it, portfolio shot, Bob.
Thanks.
Yeah, you would have gotten hired for sure.
Well, okay, so you're back. You're working with the city. Let's talk about what got you into working with the veterans group. Now you're on the veterans committee. You're the chair, right, of the veterans committee?
Yeah.
Been for many years.
Yeah.
You're obviously on the park and rec board for
Yeah.
Burbank. So when did you decide that you wanted to start working to help veterans? What was that mentality like then? And what got you to just start doing that? And and how have you progressed over the years in that?
Yeah. Well, really, let's see. I came home from Vietnam in '71, and pretty much just picked up what from where I left, and just kind of moved on, so to speak.
Right.
And had a difficult time, very difficult time, for a good 10, 12 years, and to the point where
Did you have anybody you could talk to at that point, or was it pretty much
I had a
you
few.
were-
I had a few sympathetic ears, or but I didn't want to. I didn't. I was very. I don't communicate well, and I still work at that today. So I kept a lot inside of me, and so working where you're serving people,
Good medicine.
It doesn't always work though, too, though. You
No.
know, because if with my attitude, I had trouble in the workplace. I had trouble dealing with people.
Would you say it was PTSD? I mean, would you say looking back on it?
Yeah,
Probably. Yeah.
and but so around 1988, I'd been home for 17 years, and um, my good friends knew. You know, a lot of people didn't know that I was in Vietnam because you know, we came home. We just, you know, it's like my dad. He was a World War II vet. He came home and went to work.
Yep.
Right.
You know, and didn't you know, and that's pretty much what I did.
Our greatest generation.
Yeah, you gotta, and I know my father had PTSD, but
Mhm.
when shortly before he passed on, he was in his early 80s, and he got a stipend from he put a claim in on. They lost his hearing mainly due to his wartime experience, and he was getting $250 a month, and he was happy as hell that he was getting $250 a month when he should have been getting a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, when like I said, 1988, Mr. Rich Inga, who was also a Vietnam era veteran, he called me one day and he says, you know, since you're a Vietnam vet, I'd like you to work with Bob Lundigan. Wonderful man. He's on the Park and Rec board.
Right.
He's one of the biggest impetus behind getting Brace Park.
We have one of our parks now named after him too.
Yeah, Lundigan Park over on Thornton. But he was instrumental in getting Brace Park built because he wanted his daughters to have a place to go to besides McCambridge Park. And he was the big he spearheaded that Brace Park being built. And I played baseball there the first year it was open, 8th grade, when I was in the 8th grade. So, but anyway, I got to work with Bob, who was a very patriotic man, proud World War II veteran, loved Ronald Reagan. But we were tasked with the job of, this was in May of 88, of getting a Korean War memorial and a Vietnam War memorial put at our memorial site at McCambridge. And the two people behind this also were Frank and Roberta Bullock. And I went to school from 5th grade till we graduated from Burbank High with Brian Bullock. And he lost his life off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. He was going to be a naval pilot, just like his dad was in World War II. And some malfunction, his plane went in the ocean and they never found his body.
Hmm.
So his mom and dad wanted someplace to go to remember Brian. And but they also wanted a Korean War memorial up there too, not just a Vietnam. So that's what
So was there a memorial at McCambridge Park on the corner of?
It's still there.
No. But is there anything there at that time?
Oh yeah, there was a World War II memorial.
Just a World War II by
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had moved the from where it used to be by the tennis center. They had moved it down to where it is presently at
On the corner.
Amherst and San Fernando. So I was very fortunate to work with Bob. Number one, I got to be really good friends with him, and also he was just a tireless worker and very ethical. He wanted everything to be, you know, upfront, transparent. That word that I hate today because that's all they say
It's
about.
misused now.
Yes, but anyway, we worked on it, and we worked with Congressman Moorhead's office, and one wonderful lady named Pat Wamsley was working in his office, and she's still with our Veterans Committee. She's in her late 80s. She sings God Bless America at all our ceremonies. So just a godly person, very nice, and just a wonderful lady. But, we, got together with Rich Inga and Mary Alvord and a ton of different people that I work with, and then Mr. Lundigan. We made it happen, and we dedicated on November 11th, 1988. And that's when I felt that when Mr. Inga acknowledged, he's the only one outside of my family that really ever, and friends, that acknowledged that I'd served my country. And so that's when I felt kind of this is something I think because I got a really good feeling out of it.
Hmm.
And I felt that I was doing something for my, especially for the families and the veterans that are on that memorial up there. And I knew probably 3/4 of the names on that Vietnam memorial. So, and I got got to renew my friendship with Mr. and Mrs. Bullock, who I'd known since 5th grade. And I actually gave her a picture of our 5th grade class, which Brian was in, and she never had that. So, but they were wonderful, Christian-based family. And Brian's sister and her husband come to all our ceremonies. And, fortunately, I've been blessed to lead a wonderful group of people, our Veterans Committee. And we're not appointed by council. Somebody wants to be on the committee, and they serve on the committee. We're not Brown Act, none of that. Council does not appoint us, which is a good thing.
You make it inclusive.
Yeah. So anybody comes up and they know of, so we have a lot of good people whose only goal is to do our wonderful ceremony as we possibly can for the veterans and their families.
Well, they've done a great job in remodeling, I guess you would say, to spruce it up a lot, and it looks fantastic. I know Coach takes his team over there every year and exposes them to that, which, what do you think your kids are getting out of that?
A young man approached me after the last ceremony and told me, "Thank you, Coach. I think stuff like this is important." And, I told him it's the fabric of our community. Honoring people that have sacrificed and put themselves in that position is quite amazing, really. I mean, a lot of people don't have that wherewithal. And I don't think, like Mickey was saying, I don't think it's a matter of courage as much as, the expectation. Your family lineage sometimes plays into it, and you do what you got to do, But I think we're all byproducts of our experiences, and I think that to a large degree, that's what makes Mickey, pretty legendary guy in this city, I think.
And that's also a great lesson for your kids too, to see.
Absolutely.
Because now it's all, you sign up for service. There's no more draft.
No.
I fell in a very strange time when there was no signing up for the draft. It was a 2-year period.
Sure.
Where you didn't sign up or do anything, and I fell into that 2-year period. So I thought, oh, how lucky am I? But now I look back and I say, what did I miss also in my development? Now, you're kind of shaking your head, Mickey, when you're saying, you think it.
I've had friends say the same thing.
And you think that.
I think, I believe that, your path in life is you're destined to go a certain way. And like I've had friends that weren't drafted who, one of them said, well, I kind of regret not being drafted. I says, you don't need to say that, because that's that, and don't feel guilty about anything. Guilt is very crippling.
Absolutely.
And I've had friends that were in the military say, well, I only went to Germany. I said, you did what you were told. You served your country.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Not
a vacation.
And so it's kind of like, during Desert Storm, when they had the ticker tape parade and everything in New York, which I thought was great for the men and women that served in that war. And it's not conflicts. I hate it when they call it conflicts. They're all wars, in my opinion. This is, it's not a police action. It's a war.
Yeah.
But you find a lot of people still say conflict, but that's whatever.
And even now, we have Putin's war. We have Israel's war. War is, it takes two sides to disagree and two sides who want to do harm to the other. And it's not anybody's war. It's a war. So
I always felt like the Vietnam veterans were a little underappreciated because of the circumstances surrounding that war. A lot of times, World War I, World War II, the Korean War. I went to the memorial in Washington, and it's overwhelming. And I did not serve. My grandfather was a Purple Heart recipient. All my uncles served. My dad was in the Air Force. I didn't have the privilege. And I feel lucky that I didn't in some ways. And in some ways, I'm envious of those that could do that,
My father served in World War II, and he's actually the guy in charge of the defense of Guadalcanal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was in the Army Corps of Engineers and designed the defense once they took it back.
Yeah.
So, and he was always proud of that, but it took a toll on him even, but he never talked about it.
Yeah.
That generation never talked about things like that. And sometimes now we're finding they should have had an outlet to talk, because that's important. So what are you doing now with the with the veterans? Even
Okay.
what's your ongoing projects right now?
Well, right now we're we haven't started preparing for Memorial Day at McCambridge, but we're still like maybe doing some little texting back and forth, discussing some possible things we want to do. But we usually meet a month or so before and go over last year's program and what we might want to add to this year's program, and
That's I can tell you're not a city, because every city committee, they pull out a book and say, how did we do it that last year? Let's do it again this year. I think you should always try to outdo yourself a little bit,
right,
upgrade a little bit, make it special, each year special in its own way. So I respect that. That's a great attitude.
And our committee also, we pride ourselves on taking input from anybody who attends the ceremony or watches it on public access. And if they have some things that they think we might want to add, we're open to that. And I remember when not a small thing, but something that we didn't think about when Jess Talamantes was mayor. He said, let's invite the families that are here to with the scouts to lay a rose on that. And we call it the ceremony of the rose. We lay a rose at that particular memorial where their loved one or their son or daughter is. And so we had the families, if they wanted to, or their friends, and it really went over well. So, I give Jess credit for that. Just something that, we used to always had the scouts, which is kind of, and just like Coach Hart, it's great to have the young people involved because they're not that much younger than the people, especially the high school kids. But for them to come down there and for the young people to come and sing the national anthem, or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts to come and lay a rose at one of the memorials and see pictures of some of these people that laid their lives down for our country, and it's a wonderful thing to see. And I think they kind of learned something and realized what the freedoms we have in this country is something that people are died and will die for, continue to die for, and it hasn't affected them, or maybe it has. Maybe they did lose their grandfather and they remember that. But I think it's wonderful that Bob brings them down there, and the young people take where they could be on a holiday, they could be sleeping, and they come down there. They have a practice and come down, and they have their uniforms on, and it just happened one day. Bob brought them down there, and it was great, and they've been coming ever since. So that's a genuine thing and great support, and they're not doing it just to show up and then forget about it.
All right, it wasn't a one-time thing. You've done how long have you been doing that for?
Quite a few years. One of the things that I think is most veterans that I meet are very humble, and although they don't want the accolades and they don't want they're not learning trying to garner support, but I also think that they do appreciate being recognized. I think people want to be seen, and I think it's not necessarily about them, but like in Mickey's case, he wants all his boys to be recognized and seen as well. So I see a lot of value in that, and I think it's a great message for young men and women that there's a lot involved in a country that is pretty amazing in a lot of ways. I mean, we can always get better, but if you've been overseas, you've been to some different places, you probably have a better appreciation for our freedoms.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of times when they disrespect a member of the military, they disrespect something. It's like, well, that member of the military gave you the right to disrespect that.
Exactly.
They went and fought for your right to disrespect.
Yeah.
And people should understand that also.
Absolutely.
Well, let's move on a little, because we are a sports podcast, and but I think that was extremely important to talk about.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people in town all know Mickey, but to know his background, to know what makes Mickey tick. So, but let's. So you're a baseball guy. Now let's talk about when you get back. You used to work at Dodger Stadium, correct?
Yeah, I worked Dodger Stadium from. Well, let's see. One of my coworkers I used to work with at McCambridge. This is around 1990, shortly after my son was born. I thought, I think I want to make a little extra money for Christmas or something. And he says, well, I knew Eric worked at Dodger Stadium. He goes, well, you want to work as a ticket taker? I go, maybe. He says, well, he called his boss, And this boss said, "Well, tell him to come down to Dodger Stadium on his lunch hour." So I drove down there. Mr. Norbaum, he was like a drill sergeant, great guy, and he ran the ticket takers like it was military. And so I went down and interviewed with him for like 20 minutes. He goes, "Well, when can you start?" I go, "When do you want me?" He goes, "Tomorrow night." So I started, and I worked there until the strike in 94. When was the strike?
96, 94, yeah, around that area.
Yeah,
Around that,
97. Anyway, I remember working there, taking tickets on the yellow level when the NBA championship game was going on, and they were chasing OJ around on the freeway, and everybody had those little, back then, those little TVs or whatever. So we were taking tickets and watching that at the same time. And
A little trivia for you: our police chief was actually in OJ's house and negotiated him to come back.
he was a SWAT team guy.
You're right. And he got him to come back,
Right,
and
right.
he surrendered to our chief.
Right.
Those are the days
Yeah.
at Dodger Stadium that you'd walk in the stadium and hear Vince Scully on 5,000 transistor radios.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I go back with 1958. I went to Dodger games, and that's when the transistor thing started with Vince Scully.
Yeah.
And in 1959, I was playing with the Kids for Christ Starfighters. This is September of '59, and Fred Balto was a longtime coach in Burbank, and was a wonderful person to me. Fred was great, and he took us all down to Dodge game. Me and Don Ludwig, who's a Burbank guy, well-known Burbank guy. But we all went down there, Freddie Ortega, and we sat it was 76 or 77 rows in the Coliseum. So we went down there for a doubleheader against Pittsburgh. And it was in September. The Dodgers are fighting for first place. And so we said, "Oh, we got seats behind home plate." But we didn't realize they were 75 rows up, and the players looked about as big as a. But
Wally Moon looked like a small moon.
Wally Moon. I mean, it was Vince Scully was broadcasting the Dodger game, and also doing ticker tape. This was not anything like they have now, and he was doing the Giant game at the same time up in San Francisco.
Really?
Yeah.
I
And
didn't
so
know that.
everybody was they would be cheering for if the Giants lost. And so anyway, the Dodgers swept the Pirates that day. And there's a little relief pitcher named Elroy Fates. He was 18-0, and the Dodgers beat him. So he only had that one defeat. And so, long story short, Dodgers got in the playoff, beat the Braves 2 out of 3, and went to the World Series. And that's where they beat the White Sox. And then, take it from there. Great teams. My favorite player came up as a rookie, Maury Wills, and fortunately, I got to be friends with Maury for a good 50 years. And
Should be in the Hall of Fame.
yep, should be in the Hall of Fame. I sure hope he gets there. But great man, was walk to walk as far as how he respected people. And he would always, when we go down and see him after the game, he would always accommodate every kid standing there for autographs. And he used to have me line them up from the youngest to the oldest. He'd sign the young kids first, and he'd personalize every one of them. So, Maury was
a lot of players could learn from that nowadays, couldn't they?
Yep,
Classy guy.
Yeah.
very nice man.
So, okay, so you're taking tickets. How many years did you do that?
I did it for 12 years.
Okay, so when you were done, what time? About the fourth inning or so, you'd be done, or in that area.
Right.
And then what would you do? Would you go watch the game after that, or would you leave?
Well, they would tell us, if you want to go watch the game, sit on the top deck. But we never did. If it was a Sunday game, we change in our civilian clothes,
Right.
and then we'd go down and have a beer, a bunch of us, and I still keep in touch with the ticket takers. A lot of good people. That's some of the nicest people I ever worked with in my life were ticket takers and ushers, and I had great bosses down there, and they're all like blue collar workers, postal workers, construction,
Second job, yeah.
right? But they all love baseball, and if you don't like people, that's the wrong place to go.
Well, yeah, I worked a couple of years in 77, 78 in that area, and for Danny Goodman Enterprises.
Yeah.
Hats, bats, balls, dolls here.
Yeah.
We used to, and I used to work back then we called it the yellow level.
That's all we called it.
And now,
No, that's actually
field.
Yeah, that's
field. That's
field
field
level.
Orange is
Now
low.
they've changed the colors and everything else, but I always would take yellow. You would never make much money because it's the same people every game with season tickets. All the money would be made up in the blue level,
Right.
Because those are always just turning over every game,
Right.
and those guys would make a ton of. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted to go there and be able to watch the games. And I'd slowly walk down the aisles. I could watch some of the game, and if I still say, "Hey, that's great," if I didn't say anything, I could.
Yeah, you weren't the only one that had
Yeah.
that motive, Craig.
I was making a nickel a program when I was working there. I worked for Recefo. It was a nickel a program.
And he was probably making 10 cents off each one.
Yeah, I always wish I could be the guy at the podium, just selling them as opposed to walking up and down the hard part. But fourth inning, fifth inning, watch some baseball.
Yeah. Oh, those are the days. So,
Yeah, it's still a beautiful ballpark too.
Sure is.
I remember in '62, I went there like the 5th day after it opened, and we sat in the right field pavilion, and that place was it was spectacular,
Yeah.
and it still is. They've done the remodeling, and the only thing that makes Dodger Stadium look old is the concourses. They're not as you go to the stadium in Milwaukee, it's like Magnolia Boulevard.
Yeah.
But still, Dodger Stadium is special.
For sure.
it is. My dad actually had a few pictures. He would go down during the construction, and when they're building it, and it's interesting to see what that looked like pre-stadium. The way the mountains were, and they built it into the mountain and everything else. And
Yeah, they I don't know how much soil they moved, but
well, I'll give you another little fun fact: is there were a lot of houses there too, and they actually didn't destroy all the houses. They moved, and Universal Studios bought those houses, and are back on one of their little lots right now. There's 6 or 7 houses on the street. They were all at Dodger Stadium.
yeah, there's still people that hate the Dodgers for what they did.
Yes,
Absolutely.
In O'Malley, but in fact, when I was playing baseball at Cambridge at Burbank High, we played Cathedral High School, which their home field was at the police academy at a field up there, and they were building Dodger Stadium when we played there, and you could see just unbelievable. They had it terraced already, and the only thing about Dodger Stadium is the parking, but otherwise it's great.
and the price of parking now.
It's ludicrous.
And the thing is,
Frank McCourt.
the Dodgers have a lease on that property. The city of LA gave them a $1 a year lease for 99 years. So the Dodgers lease that land for $1 a year, and they keep 100% of the parking. But now McCourt is actually still getting the parking.
Yes.
He's getting some of it.
Yeah, and they've raised the price so much. We were talking the other day about SoFi Stadium, where it costs $125 to park your car there.
Yeah.
Which
Who
wants to go to a game and already you're down $125 and you haven't even got your car yet?
You talk about the Dodger Stadium or Dodger baseball is the most inexpensive professional sport.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not a big NBA fan. I don't like the style of the game. I go back to Magic or I go all the way back to Elton Baylor and Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. That was a Laker and Chick Hearn.
Chicky baby. Well, let's talk a little about your another evolution of yours, and that's running. You've run some marathons. What got you into, when did you start doing that, and what got you into running to start doing that?
Well, I have to get credit to my late father, my dad. He went to the doctor. He just getting ready to retire from the post office. He worked 35 years for the post office, and my dad had that great work ethic. He worked 2 jobs until I graduated college. And so as when I was young, we didn't get to go to a lot of sporting events together because he was working. But my grandfather, my dad's father, he was a big baseball fan. He immigrated here from Italy in 1914, and 3-4 years later, he was serving his new country. And anyway, my dad went to the doctor, and the doctor says, my dad was kind of stout, about 5'6", So he told my dad he needed to lose some weight. So he says, why don't you start walking? So I said, okay. So my dad starts walking, and then all of a sudden he starts running, And he was getting all these Runner's World magazines, and so I started reading them. And about a year after my dad started running, I said, well, shoot, I think I'll start too. So I started in 1979, and I read every publication I could on running, and I had a kind of a I guess back then, a long range goal of, I got into the running and, right away, like February of 79. So 5 or 6 months into my running, I says, I want to run a marathon, but I'm not ready to run one yet. So I talked to a lot of people that have been running for quite some time, some of my high school buddies, and they said, train for 2 years before you try a marathon. And I listened to what they said. And so in 81, I bought a book and trained from this book. And it had what time you think you want to run. Well, I wanted to get under 3 hours and 30 minutes. So I took the training for that because I thought I was capable of that. And so, excuse me, I just trained by myself, read that book, and ended up running 3:23 for my first marathon. I was over at the Rose Bowl, the YMCA, the Pasadena YMCA. And so, long story short, my dad and I used to go to 5 and 10Ks together, and it was a real where I really bonded with my father. We went to a lot of sporting events once he retired, and he loved SC, so he bought season tickets to SC, went to SC games, and just kind of a great father-son relationship. We tried fishing and everything else, and we kind of made up for lost time, And we always had one thing in common: we would serve our country. So, and my dad was a quiet man. We didn't communicate, but we did communicate. I always knew my father and mother loved me, but we weren't like you know a family that showed a lot of emotion sometimes. Which is I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think that was more from that generational type thing.
Absolutely, it was.
Yeah. And it was like I said, when I went in the army, it was like, my dad wasn't going to give me sympathy. I did it. You can do it too. He trust me, he didn't want me to go to Vietnam. Neither did my mom, but it was inevitable. So it's my dad's really gave me the inspiration to do it. And then I ran my first marathon, and then I got real serious about it, and I started training with Laszlo Tabori in 1980, right before the '84 Olympics. And Laszlo was he had his training quarters at Valley College back in those days. And he was the third man in the history of the world to go under 4 minutes in a mile. In 1955, he broke 4 minutes. He was the third man. And the guy behind him was the fourth man to break 4 minutes.
Who was the first? Bannister, right?
Yeah, Roger Bannister. But Laszlo was an Olympian in the '56 Olympics in Melbourne, and he defected to the United States. Didn't go back, and had family still in Hungary. But he was a wonderful friend and mentor. I was very blessed to have his friendship, number one, and then he was a mentor and really a great coach. And he didn't give out compliments, And I'm in my 40s, and when he'd say, "Hey, you're doing good," that was like your teacher told you were doing good. And we all felt good about that. I'm 42 years old, but he had that effect on people.
And so, how many marathons have you done?
Well, I haven't done one since 2008 LA Marathon. So I've done 44 overall.
Wow.
I wish I could have done a lot more, but my knees didn't cooperate. I did way too much training on concrete and blacktop. And I would encourage anybody that's thinking about, getting their mileage up and running marathons is to get on the dirt as much as you possibly can. Hindsight doesn't do any good, but I probably would have done that if I had running literally saved my life. I really believe that.
In what sense?
It's just that I had some feelings that weren't very good, mentally, and so this gave me something to kind of positive to get out and think. I do a lot of thinking when I'm running, and the endorphins thing, that's a truism. When they say they call it a runner's high, and you really feel that way. And then when you get up in the morning, I get up 4 o'clock in the morning and go on runs with my buddy Fred Ortega, and we do 10 milers every day. And then that 5 days, and then on Sunday, if we're getting ready for a marathon, we do a 20 miler, and we did that religiously. And then we trained with Laszlo twice, 2 nights a week. So, but it's mentally is where it helped me more mentally than it did physically.
Yeah, let's get into the mental part a little, because Coach and I both are not runners, nor do we ever just
I run for a cheeseburger occasionally.
Yeah, there you go. We run out of time, but no, we when you're running and you hit, they call the wall, I guess, right? I mean, there's nobody there to encourage you. You're by yourself. You're in the heat of the. What is it? How do you convince yourself to push your body behind? Because you want to stop. You want to quit. Say, I've had enough. I can't go any longer. What mentally pushes you to get past that and to keep going? What do you tell yourself? How do you? Where does that come from?
But it's like I don't want to sound overly dramatic here, but when you do long distance running, or it's kind of like it's like life. Some days you feel great, and you don't hit that wall as early as you did maybe the last marathon. And there's ups and downs. I mean, mentally, sometimes you get really down. Jesus, this is hurting. I don't know if I want to. You always say, I don't think I'll do any more of these. Well, when you finish one, that goes right out the window. But no, it's a real test mentally, And if you train like you're supposed to, you're going to finish a marathon. You're going to want to do another one, but you got to train for it. You can't just. I've known a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm going to run the LA Marathon. Have you been training?" Oh, about 3 weeks. You might finish it, but you're not going to run one again, or you're going to hurt so bad, the next day. So I think the training part is the hardest, and the race day you're antsy. I always had a lot of anxiety, but once the race started, I would lock myself in by the 4th or 5th mile.
So, not only have you run marathons and you're talking about the mental aspect, but you've been a high school coach and coached cross country at Loyola High School.
Right.
What got you into that?
Well, like I said, I coached. I coached with Mike when my son was young. We coached basketball together, and then I volunteered with the Viking football when Michael was playing, and so I've had some coaching experience. I coached that way back in 1967. One of my best friends, Sam LaCursi, and we coached the Dino's Demons, and we had Mike McDonald, Pat McDonald, Ken Bauer. And I always said, Mike McDonald says, he's my first baseball coach. I says, that's why you were such a good football player. But, and I still see Mike to this day, and Tom, and, great guys, And so, what was I talking about?
We're talking about Loyola and coaching. And
yeah.
And when how do you motivate those, with your background now, did those players have problems with that wall and stuff? How did you communicate that to them?
But now these guys, these young people, some of the greatest kids I've ever worked with, high school, freshman to senior year. But my son went to Loyola and played football there. So I'd heard of the coach, Lalo Diaz, who's one of the greatest coaches, in high school cross country in the nation. And he's just recently retired. But I came up to him and my son's senior year, 2008. And after I'd retired, I've been retired for about 2 weeks. And I sat around for about 2 weeks, and it was weird. You had this, I said, I got to do something. And this is not, I can't sit around. So I went down and, since I do have a running background, I've been running since 1979. This is 2008, and I'm still running. And I have a little knowledge of it, and I've had that coaching experience. So I went to Lalo one day before school, and I said, I introduced myself. I said, if you'd like to help you out, if I can, volunteer. And he didn't say, oh, yeah, sure, come on out. He says, well, come on to practice tomorrow morning. And he says, we'll see how I'll give you a week or so, see how the kids adjust to you. And
that's a smart coach. That's a coach.
Absolutely.
And that's how. And Lalo is number one. He's a great friend, but he's the hardest working coach I think I've ever coached. Coached under. And so 16 years later, I coached there for 16 years, and we won 3 state championships. And Lalo's won 6 overall. And but Loyola has this this mantra. It's called Men for Others. And it's a truism at that school. And the young men that I coach in cross country, great attitudes. I mean, not every, you don't have, it wasn't a walk in the park, trust me. But my whole coaching, we had like 4 coaches. We all had different strengths, and so we all kind of meshed really well. We got along real well. If we had an argument, we'd do it off from the kids. We'd go to breakfast after and discuss things, after a meet or after a practice. So we had a lot of camaraderie coaching wise. And my biggest strength with the kids is I love working with the kids that are going to be runners their whole life, but they might not be as talented as your top 5 runners. I love watching a young kid from the 9th grade through his senior year blossom into it'll end up being running will be his lifetime sport. And a lot of these kids went off to a 4-year school, ran there too. I'm still in touch with a lot of them, and I got the reputation of being. I would try to the least bit of improvement. I go up to the young kid and tell him, you're working hard. You keep working hard. I'll guarantee you'll improve and make a name for yourself here at Loyola and be a part of a winning experience. And
but when they came to you and they said, "This is tough," I don't know if I can do. How did you convey to them their mental toughness?
Yeah, and I would tell them. I says, believe it or not, especially when we first started meeting with the kids as a freshman, we'd put them through basically some stuff that would, see how they responded. But I would tell them, believe it or not, if you show up to every practice, this stuff is still going to be hard, but it's going to be easy, if that makes any sense. It's hard, but you kind of mentally prepare yourself for it. And these young kids came out 2 workouts, 11 workouts a week, 2 Monday through Friday, and then 1 big workout on Saturday, unless we were competing. So they had discipline to begin with. They were there early morning. School started at 8. They were there at 6:15 to start practice.
I know I didn't coach cross country.
Yeah, they're very dedicated.
Yeah, but we have to be there too. Both,
Sure.
when I first started going there, my knees weren't as bad, and I used to run with the kind of the middle of pack kids. And I don't know if you know where Loyola is. It's on Peak. It's down there on
25
Vermont.
years coaching at Crespi. I was there many times.
We would run early in the morning down Pico. We'd run up through Figueroa by Staples Center, and we took a whole tour of downtown LA because we didn't have any other place to practice. And then we would do track work, and then on weekends or during the weekday afternoons, I'd meet the kids in Griffith Park or up by the Greek Theater, and we'd train on hills up there. And a great experience. And I met some great people at Loyola, and I still keep in touch with them. We have a real bonding thing with our coaches, and we get alumni every Thanksgiving. We get together at the Rose Bowl, and 50 or 60 kids show up that used to run at Loyola throughout the years, and we go on a run together, and I still hear from a lot of kids I coached, and so it's very gratifying. It's a win-win for me. I get more out of it than the kids do. I think volunteering is a great thing. That's another thing that I've used since I retired is it's something. I feel I need to do something. I can't just sit around, and I have something to contribute, and I want to do that, and as long as I'm able.
I think you look at a lot of people who are still around after they retire for years and years, and you'll always see that they have an interest, they're doing an activity, they're not just sitting at home watching television and saying,
Purpose.
Yeah.
Gotta have a purpose.
So I think that's, you hit that nail on the head right there.
Yeah, you've got to, it sometimes, I have a tendency sometimes, but not very often. And I think I just want to sit around all day, and that doesn't last. I'll come in 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I'm ready. That's it. I'm at the age now where driving at night, I don't like doing all that much, but I I'm still able to do it. So
You earn the right not to do it sometimes too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I still have to be aware of my age. Sometimes I'm not, and I do a little too much as far as exercise.
Only as old as you feel.
and I pay for it.
You're only as old as you feel, though.
Yeah.
You know what you said about athletes. When athletes know that you believe in them and that you are on their side and you want their success, I think it's much more attainable for them.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Coach. I think all the kid needs is a little, they got that ability, and all they need is some encouragement. I don't care if they improve by 1/10 of a second on their time. That's still your best time you've ever run.
Yep.
And coming from the positive side is what I did. Don't get me wrong, I disciplined them too.
Sure.
I was very consistent. If a kid wasn't doing what I thought he was to do, but I don't believe in yelling and screaming, And if I do discipline a kid during practice, I always pull them aside after practice and tell them, hey, listen, the reason I did that, if I didn't think you had any talent, I wouldn't care.
Yep.
Or if I didn't like you, I love you as a kid. I love you you're a great young man. You have a great mom and dad, but I'm coming from a good place here. Know that. And, fortunately, majority of the kids responded. Some kids I wasn't successful with, but by and large, I think all us coaches working together, we lended that program a lot of success, but it was the kids. It's a buy-in. The kids have to buy into what you do, and we worked hard.
I always go back to that John Woodenism because he's my hero or one of them. But I don't always. What did he say? I love all my players. I just don't always like them.
Yep. This is true.
Some truth to that.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Actually, I always told my kids, I said, yelling at you means I like you. Because if you are screwing up and I'm not yelling at you, that means I probably really just don't care about you and do whatever because I moved on without you. So yelling at sometimes lets kids know that you're on them and that you do care about them.
And I look back at some of the coaches that I had. I mentioned Laszlo, but he was coaching in my 40s. But he still, he was tough. He worked us hard, but he didn't work us any harder than we were capable of. But one of the coaches that I was a real mentor for me, and I never got to play that much for him because mostly because I was lazy. If I would have put as much work in baseball as I did in my running, I might have been pretty decent. But Coach Jack Schwartzbaugh back in the 60s at Burbank High, he always wanted us to look the part. If you're going to come out looking like sloppy on the field, you're going to play sloppy. So he would make sure we come out there. There were sanitary socks back in those days, and everything had to be clean. You had to have your pants bloused. You had to look the part of a baseball player. And plus the fact we made mental errors, he'd charge us 10 cents, and then he'd use that for banquet money. I contributed quite a bit. But
well, you do that nowadays, and you'll have everybody after you.
Yeah, and he passed away several years ago, but I still on Facebook with his wife, and I always said that Coach Schwartzbaugh was probably the best coach that I ever had to play for, but he was also he didn't play favorites, and he was very consistent. And I was screwing around in practice one day, and the next day I was down to JVs. I was playing real good my varsity junior year at Burbank High, but I was a little immature, and he straightened me up, sent me down to JVs, and I still remember that. And I was like dumbfounded because I thought I was going to get to play a lot of varsity that year, but I ended up staying to JVs the whole year. So, but he taught me a lesson, and I respected that. And we all have our different mentors in life, good and bad things,
Right. Nowadays, the parents go in and yell and complain, and you fire the coach.
That's one thing my dad would have never done. I got what I deserved. Discipline in school, my dad's first thought was, what did you do? It wasn't the teacher. Yeah. No way. Yeah. It was always what I did. So, yeah, it's tough today. It's tough.
It's more than you think. Coach, anything else on the running, or are we ready for our question, our topic?
I think we go.
Okay. We like to, at the end of our shows, come up with a kind of a current event topic and just kind of throw it out there, and there's no right or wrong to it. But I was this thing with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, being accused of one of his coaches paid a guy to go to games, videotape the other team's signs during the game, decipher them, and then tell them what they were. And now they suspended Jim Harbaugh, who they say had no knowledge of this for 3 games, and the teams use it as a badge of honor. So my question is this, and my take is, coming from a baseball background, we don't consider it cheating, but our players will watch signs from second base. We watch the other coaches give signs. That's kind of the give and take of the game. We're not doing anything illegal. We're not sneaking up on them. We're not interrupting their practice. But to us, that's part of the game of baseball. Compared to the Houston Astros, of course, who have a guy in the scoreboard, with a camera, and then they're banging a trash can. We're talking players only usually, and I don't know what, Coach, you have any thoughts on this also?
I think it comes down to gamesmanship versus cheating. I think gamesmanship is, a guy on second base, he's maybe tipping his batter to what's coming. I think that's gamesmanship, and I think it's always been that way, and it'll always be that way. I think when you start to have technology involved and it gives one team an advantage over the other team, then that becomes problematic for me.
You kind of wonder, did other teams ever do the same thing and videotape other teams and just have never been, basically caught at it? If that's,
yeah,
I can't imagine Michigan invented that.
No, I can't either. I'm sure that goes on quite often. I know the Rams had a situation with Belichick back Super Bowl, and they were filming the practice. I find that unethical,
right.
But
And Mickey, any thoughts on? You're an old baseball guy too. What about? Did you now back in your days at Burbank High? Did you guys work on stealing signs or trying to tip things was the game played that way back then?
Yeah, I don't think we did. We did a lot of situations where Coach Schwartzbaugh would, he would sit there and have people that weren't out in the field during the base running, and so we would do different situations, have runners at second, third, and what would we do, this and that, and if we made an error, we'd have to start the game over again. So sometimes, fortunately, Burbank High didn't have lights back then. So they would have to call the practice. Otherwise, we'd been out there till 10 o'clock at night. But, getting back to Jim Harbaugh, well, I think one of the main things, his name's Jim Harbaugh. And I think the NCAA, to me, which should go away, I think they need another ruling or another board or another something. I think the NCAA is out. You lived its usefulness. I really do. But I also think that other people have done this. This is not. It's not,
that's what I thought.
And it doesn't make it right. It's still unethical. But Harbaugh, being the head coach, has to take the fall for it. But this 3-game suspension, and when they still won the games, and but he was coaching still.
Right.
Let's not fill ourselves.
I think the way they also did it, they waited until he showed up in a game and said go home or whatever. I don't think that was handled very well by their.
I just think that when you're a big name, it's like I think the NCAA has they want to get you. They want to get a gotcha moment, and I don't think it's the most grievous thing they've ever done in coaching is what he did. Whether he knew it or not, he's responsible for it. He's the head coach,
right?
So and as far as sitting there, you go out and scout a team, or they send the coaches out to scout a team the weekend before you play them in high school.
Right.
Well, you see what they're doing with their hands. It goes, oh yeah, that every time this guy does that, this happens.
Sure.
Same thing.
I've done pre-scouting, in baseball before, and I brought a video camera with me, sat behind home plate, and videotaped the other pitcher and what he was doing. I think that's been done. We weren't doing somewhere we shouldn't be. We sat in a seat like everybody else, and so that's why I find what they did on this a little bit. I just don't understand how they consider it a cheating type thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the thing is with college now, since with this NIL and the transfer portal, I'm not as big a fan of college football as I was. I mean, this is a thing that's going to happen, but we got some of the kids that transfer out of a school because they don't have NIL and they go someplace else that has NIL. And there some of them are $4 or $5 million in the bank before they even take a snap or whatever.
Well,
So more power to the kids, though. If they can get the money, I don't blame them. But I just some of there's no recruiting. I don't think SC recruited at all. I don't think Lincoln Riley highly recruited. He had recruits from whenever when.
Well, you wonder how to recruit off the portal.
Yeah, see that. Well, that's what he did.
Recruiting goes on. I think.
Same thing with Deion Sanders. He took 45 players there with him, got rid of 45. So it's changed, and it's I think it's minor league NFL now.
Yeah, it is. I think back in the day too, baseball at least would take care of itself. If people were cheating, you had a way of evening that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Now that's frowned upon because of lawsuits or whatever it might be.
Right.
But back in the day, the players would take care of it. So a little different.
Yeah.
A pitcher would know. And I have a story one time when there was a team that I had a pitcher who played for me who was played in the major leagues. And since I've had two different pitchers, nobody will know which one I'm talking about. But I said, hey, were you told to do that? Does that ever go on? And because they always, no, we're never told. He goes, what they do is they don't let us do it the day of the happening. They wait till they come back to town or go to that team's, and only then will he say when to do it. It's not, but it's on the agenda.
You're not looking to do it with
Right.
2 outs in the ninth and bases loaded. So
Right.
yeah.
So, but it is under the managers do order it, whether they admit it or not. But found it very interesting.
Yeah.
And
You'll find more sophisticated players, even at the high school level, know when to do that.
I one time
Purpose pitch.
I one time made the mistake of saying, to put a guy down, and we had it was a top pitcher we had, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't. He just I can't. He tried. He kept missing him.
Yeah.
And after I said, you know what, not a good choice on my part.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he didn't get hit. And what if he would have got hurt seriously?
Right.
There was too much. You really had to think about your emotions in that. And so I learned a lesson. I learned a lesson that day, and I actually told him, you know what, thank you for not doing it, because you know what, I told him I made a mistake in ordering that.
Well, the greatest pitcher I've ever seen, and I fortunately got to see him pitch very often. Sandy Koufax refused to throw at anybody. Drysdale was all for it. But
Gibson too.
Yeah.
You one of mine. I hit 2 years.
But Koufax wouldn't do it, and the Dodger players respected that. Sandy Koufax is unbelievable. He's a legend. The guy's a humble,
Big time.
great human being.
I remember him seeing him pitch. Like once I saw Drysdale twice, I think, and I just wish I had more appreciation for the game and the players and all that back at that age and everything else, and you could comprehend more of what I was seeing.
Right.
Until guys like Claude Osteen came around, people like that, or Don Sudden, that I started really appreciating the technique more.
I grew up, I think, maybe I'm a little biased, but from the mid '50s to the 1970, that's when baseball was,
It was pure.
it was pure baseball.
Mantle,
I got to
Aaron.
see so many great players, and when Maury was playing with the Pittsburgh Pirates, we drove up to San Francisco to watch him play a series up there, and so I went over to the hotel where the Pirates were staying, and we sat down and had breakfast at the Sheraton Palace Hotel there with Roberto Clemente, Maury Wills, Andre Rogers, Matty Alou, and it was like,
Wow.
and really good people. And Clemente, I just saw something on him on Facebook recently. Now he was not only he died doing a mercy mission for the Nicaraguans, taking food there, and
It was New Year's Eve one year. Yeah.
the idiot pilot that overloaded the airplane, and then Clemente came from this, to this country and served in the Marine Corps in the reserves, and he said that was his duty to serve his country, and what an amazing man,
How fitting that he ended exactly with 3,000 hits too.
Yeah, yep, it was meant to be. He was just as far as one of the greatest players I ever saw, was great arm.
Great arm.
Back then, that's when there was such thing as a 5-tool player.
Yeah.
What do you guys? I asked you a question real quick here.
Oh.
What's your who thinks what's the greatest player you've ever seen? Or that's how I really can't comment on Babe Ruth because I never saw him play. But
they talk about that. I think it's a lot of generational too.
Yeah. Oh God.
I mean,
for sure.
How good was Kobe Bryant the best player ever, or was Michael Jordan? I think it's always generational. It was Bill Russell in basketball.
I don't think Wilt's given enough
He's not.
credit.
No, absolutely.
And I go back to Wilt. And then Kareem. I still think Kareem's very underrated.
I do too. He's never mentioned in that discussion, yet he's got to be.
Unbelievable. That sky hook, nobody could block that.
When you got to change the rules for the guy in college. That tells you something.
They did.
That kid in the plane said his dad thought he didn't run enough. Yeah. Movie Airplane, remember that?
Okay, who's the best player you've ever seen? Baseball.
I was at one of Nolan Ryan's no-hitters. We were talking about it earlier tonight. And it was just amazing to watch his technique.
There was no pitch counts either.
No pitch counts back then. Wow,
I'll tell you mine.
I used to love Pete Rose. I used to love the way he played the game, and just, he all it meant was winning with him, So, there's a couple for you, but I don't think I could put my finger on one because I've seen so many.
Yeah. In my era, was Henry Aaron.
Oh.
I'll take him over Willie Mays. I'll take him over Berto Clemente. I'll take him over, you name it.
5'10", 170.
Yeah, and I read his biography, learned a little bit more about the man himself, and he played in a smaller market, obviously, than Mantle but what a player!
I got to meet him one time. We stayed for after a game for autographs, and came out and he signed for everybody, and very nice man. And I mean, I wish knew that. I bet you I have that autograph somewhere still. Back then, we would only have here sign a piece of paper. There was nothing, his card or his a picture and anything else. So there was just a name, and then you had to remember because a lot of times you couldn't read the name.
Right.
Okay, so I was on the hook, Coach. What about you, greatest player?
Mine is probably centered around nostalgia and my own age. I loved Lou Gehrig. I grew up idolizing the guy, probably because of the pride of the Yankees and things like that.
Right.
But Lou Gehrig was my guy, and I liked the fact that he was, Babe Ruth was a little bit more, out there, publicity wise or whatever. So I just gravitated to his humility. I liked that part of him. I thought he was just a good man. Just from that standpoint alone, I fell in love with Lou Gehrig, and obviously that was not my era.
No, but still, you've read stuff about him, and I think you mentioned the personal side of him, and I think that has a lot to do. I thought Henry Aaron was a pretty down to earth, just the stuff I've read about him.
Yeah,
I never saw it coming out of you. I would not have.
When you say, that shocks me, Bob. But that's what a player.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
my grandfather was a Major League Baseball player. He played with the Pirates and he played with the Phillies. And he was lucky enough to roommate with Yogi Berra in spring training.
The greatest catcher
somewhere along the line in minor leagues or whatever.
And see, and that's the difference. See, I looked at pure ability, where what I respect so much out of Coach Hart is that he looks at the mental side, all the human side, not just the physical side.
I think that's a good thing,
and that's a huge.
That's the whole person.
I wish I had that ability sometimes.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's you see the big picture, Bob. I notice that.
I try to keep learning. That's
the key.
That is the key.
And you're never too old to learn. Trust
No.
me. I mean, I speak from experience. I'm still learning today, and I'm glad I am.
My kids teach me stuff every day, you know.
Can I make a quick, I don't know if this is, yeah, kind of a little plug here.
Absolutely.
Okay. I've been fortunate to be involved with the VFW in Burbank
Right.
over on Magnolia. And we're always looking for veterans and their families if they want to come in and join us for some camaraderie, some fellowship, or if they want to get help with maybe filing a claim with the VA. We have all that at their exposure. And if they want to come in and they don't have to join, or if they want to bring their family in and talk over the situation that they're in, if we can get the answer for them, we will. If not, we will find the answer. But we have what they call a veteran service officer that comes there the fourth Monday at 6 p.m. to help with them if they want to file a claim with the VA or if they have any questions about the VA. So we encourage them to come over, and if anybody ever wants to do a fundraiser breakfast, Coach Hart has done stuff there with Burbank Baseball. This Sunday at 8:30 a.m., the Burbank High Golf is coming.
There you go.
So we encourage Burbank, Providence.
Leadership Burbank just did a nice job in renovating.
Certainly did.
And you have how many? I think it seats about 125 or so.
Yeah, well, we had what cheerlead? Oh, the Burroughs cheerleaders broke our record. They had 230 people coming in and out for breakfast. So that's something for you to shoot for, Coach.
I would tell a fire marshal about that.
Yeah. Well, they're in and out. You know what I mean?
Right,
it's not like if we had 230 in there, that would be a problem.
But I think the VFW is a hidden gem in Burbank as far as a meeting location, and
Sure.
It's got a great facility in there,
Right.
the kitchen facility.
If you want to rent the kitchen, or if you want to use the hall, we've done weddings there. We've done celebration of life there. We've had bands there. So and I'm lucky to be involved with it because I'm around my brother and sister veterans, and it's a good place to go.
We'll put a link, of how to get a hold of, We have it for a website or an email or something.
Sure, go to VFW. We have a Facebook site.
Okay.
All that stuff.
We'll put that down in our description on below the show here, so people can can see that.
And if they have any questions regarding anything veterans rights, they can call the VFW. They'll get me the message, and I'll get back to them ASAP because we like to respond to anybody that needs help or wants some information on something. So
Great resource.
Yeah. And that's the reason that we talked about having you on the show was, we talk sports here, but I think it's all your continuing activity you're doing now for our veterans. And now they understand your background a little bit, and how you needed that help at one time, and now you're there to help others.
Right.
Which is it's a tremendous thing.
Yeah. I did, through the encouragement of a doctor I coached with, and one of my Vietnam vet buddies who he gave me the avenue to get what help I needed, and that was about 6 years ago, and so I'm better for it. And but it's like you have to be. It's always you're always trying to do something better. We try not to settle in life, and so I'm blessed. I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful daughter-in-law and a grandson and another grandson coming. So I'm blessed. Life's good.
The respect of a community, Mickey. That's a good legacy.
That's nice to have, but it's
not family, but it's nice.
It's wonderful to have, but without the support of number one, my family.
Sure.
Even when I was a child, I always I had very good role models in my parents, and they taught me that to give of yourself, and that was it. When I can remember being second or third grade, and I wanted to give something to somebody.
I think I talk to players about that quite a bit, and I used to work in juvenile probation. I would talk to them as well about the element of giving back. I think it's a healing thing for both sides. So I think there's
certainly
a lot of value in the volunteerism, doing something for nothing,
right.
Selflessness. I think that, and I believe in karma, and I think that comes back full circle. I think when you do right by people, they tend to reciprocate.
Right, and I agree. I think if we all do something that helps others or supports others, we're going to reap the benefits.
Yeah.
And I think we all speak from experience of that because we've all coached, we've all been a part of of serving our community. So
Yeah.
there's nothing like it.
Yeah, I think that's a big draw for sports for people too, is the sanctuary of it. You
Yeah,
know,
it is. It is.
It's a place to, like you said, when you're running, that's all the thing. That's the only thing happening in the world.
Right. And it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Those endorphins are true, but
Yep.
I think I've told Bob this before, and I told his team, I think on Veterans Day, if you're a part of a team, if you play on one team your whole life, and no matter how old you are, and you see that girl or boy you played with,
Yep.
30 years later, you remember that.
Yep.
Being a part of a team is a wonderful thing, and I think every child should have that opportunity.
I've coached for a long time, and there are a lot of kids I've coached, and the teams always stay together year after year.
Yeah, they do. I have a get together once a year with all my buddies. I hung out at McCambridge Park from the 1957 when the park opened through college, and then we all went our separate ways, but we always get together once a year. I've known these guys since 1956, and we still get together, all because we played sports.
Yep. The tie that bonds, right?
It sure is.
Yeah.
And we laugh about stuff. You'd be surprised what a memory you have of it. I remember stuff long ago more than I remember what I walked in a room for.
Yep.
That might be a whole new podcast in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mickey, I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on. We probably went a little longer than we usually do today, but I think the stories were amazing. And for people to get to know you as much as they know you, but do they really know you? And I think now they've got to know you a little, kind of what makes Mickey Mickey.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Craig and Bob, for having me. I wish you guys much success with your podcasts. And there are so many great people in our community that I'm sure you know of them, that will come on here and impart some really good information. And that's what makes Burbank. This is no matter how things go. Things change. Some for the good, some for not good. But it's still Burbank in a lot of ways.
That was kind of our motivation for doing this, too.
We're fostering that, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Oh, well, Coach, anything else?
No, great to be here. Great to see you, Mickey.
Likewise.
Always a pleasure.
Likewise, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
You
Absolutely.
as well.
Or as I say on Seinfeld, Happy Festivus.
Yeah, for the rest of us. Okay, for Bob Hart and Mickey DePalo, this is Craig Sherwood saying thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
My Burbank Talks would like to thank all of My Burbank's advertisers for their continued support. Burbank Water and Power, Cusimano Real Estate Group, UME Credit Union, Burbank Chamber of Commerce, Gain Credit Union, Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, Community Chevrolet, Media City Credit Union, UCLA Health, Tequila's Burbank, Logix Credit Union, Hill Street Cafe, Bertain Escobar Wealth Management, and the UPS store on 3rd Street.
How would you like your business advertised in this very spot? My Burbank Talks is looking for local businesses interested in a 30-second spot to appear in our podcasts. If you're interested, please email advertising@myburbank.com, and we'll be glad to discuss all the exciting possibilities with you. Now, back to our podcast.